The weight of war. When you're caught in the grip of war, there's a certain kind of weight that you never fully understand until you're carrying it. It's not just the physical things, the rifles, the grenades, the helmets. It's the invisible burden. The one that presses down on your chest, suffocates your breath, and makes your heart heavy with things you can't speak of. War is a place where you don't just carry supplies. You carry memories, fears, regrets, things that could never fit into a pack, no matter how big. For Lieutenant Jimmy Cross, the weight he carried was more than just a physical one. He carried a responsibility far beyond his years, the lives of his men resting on his decisions. Every step he took in the jungle, every order he gave, felt as though it might tip the scales of fate for someone he cared about. But Jimmy also carried something far more personal: Martha's letters. She was the girl he loved from afar, a love that was never reciprocated in the way he dreamed it would be. Yet, every letter from Martha, every photograph was a lifeline. She was his escape, the thing that kept him tethered to the world outside of the war. But this too was a burden, because Martha, in her own way, carried a weight of indifference. She never truly understood what he felt. She never fully embraced him. In the letters, she wrote about the beach, about college, about her life that kept moving forward without him. And while he read her words, hoping for a sign that she cared, Jimmy Cross knew deep down that no matter how much he wished, that love was a one-sided fantasy, a distraction from the harsh realities around him. The physical and emotional burdens. The men in the jungle weren't just weighed down by their packs. They were weighed down by the constant fear of what might happen next. Ted Lavender, one of the soldiers, carried fear with him wherever he went. It wasn't just the fear of the enemy or the fear of dying. It was the fear of what could never be prepared for, the unexpected ambush that came without warning. Lavender, in his way, tried to cope by carrying marijuana. It was his escape, his attempt to make sense of the senseless, to dull the sharp edges of reality. But what Lavender didn't know was that this small comfort wouldn't protect him. And then it happened. In the blink of an eye, Ted Lavender was dead, a bullet to the head. The marijuana he carried, his brief escape from the war, meant nothing now. His fear, his struggle to find peace, was gone. But for the others, his death became another layer of weight they now had to carry. It wasn't just about losing a fellow soldier. It was about the cold reality that no one was safe. And every man from that point forward knew that they too could be next. Personal reflection on war and loss. When you're in war, it's easy to lose track of who you were before the battlefield. The things you carried become a part of you, but not in the way you would want. They don't define you in a positive light. They become the weights that drag you down, the memories that refuse to let you go. For me, I remember my own experiences with loss, not from war, but from life's battles that felt just as heavy at times. There was a time when I was separated from the people I loved most. The distance between us was not physical, but emotional. Much like Jimmy Cross, I held on to things, letters, photographs, the comforting thoughts of a life that could have been. And while those things kept me anchored, they also prevented me from fully moving forward. I was stuck in the past just as he was. And like the soldiers in Vietnam, I didn't realize how much those memories were weighing me down until I faced them head-on. But unlike the soldiers in the things they carried, I had the opportunity to leave behind the weight of my past when I chose to face it and let go. For these men, the weight they carried never really went away. Even when they left Vietnam, it followed them home, a shadow that couldn't be escaped. And that's perhaps one of the most haunting truths of war. The physical wounds may heal, but the emotional scars never truly fade. Deep dive into the psychological burden. One of the most powerful aspects of the things they carried is how Tim O'Brien masterfully explores the psychological toll of war. The men don't just carry physical items. They carry trauma, fear, guilt, regret. These are the heaviest loads, the ones that eat away at you from the inside. You don't have to be a soldier to understand this feeling. Every person has something they carry, something that weighs on them. Whether it's the loss of a loved one, a mistake they can't undo, or a fear they can't face. The men in Vietnam were not immune to these emotional burdens. In fact, it was the very nature of war that forced them to confront these inner demons. When you're surrounded by death and violence, when every moment feels like it could be your last. The emotional weight becomes too much to bear, and yet, somehow they continued to push forward. Each step was a reminder of what they had lost, but also what they still had to protect. As I reflect on my own experiences, I realize that the weight of the things I've carried, whether it was fear, regret, or sorrow, has shaped who I am today. I've learned that while we can't always control what we carry, we can choose how we carry it. But the soldiers in the things they carried didn't have that luxury. They had no choice but to carry their burdens, because doing anything else would have meant surrendering to the war, surrendering to the fear that threatened to consume them. The unspoken burden. There's something deeply human about the way O'Brien portrays the things left unsaid in the stories of these men. So much of their suffering was internal, buried beneath layers of pride, fear, and guilt. They couldn't always talk about what they felt, not because they didn't want to, but because the words simply weren't enough. And this is something we can all relate to. How many of us have experienced a loss, a trauma, or a fear that we couldn't put into words? How many times have we wanted to scream, to release the weight, but the words failed us? The soldiers in the things they carried learned to speak without speaking, to communicate their pain through silence, through their actions, through the things they carried. It wasn't just the physical items that told their stories. It was their eyes, their bodies, their very souls that carried the unspoken truth of their experiences. Closing reflection. The men of the things they carried didn't just fight against the enemy, they fought against themselves. They fought against their own fears, their own pasts, their own guilt. And yet, even in the midst of war, there was a fragile bond between them, a shared understanding of what it meant to carry something. In many ways, we all carry something. Whether it's the weight of our own choices, the memories of things lost, or the unspoken fears that haunt us, these burdens define us, even when we don't realize it. But in the end, it's not about how heavy the weight is, but how we choose to carry it. Do we let it crush us? Or do we find a way to walk forward, step by painful step, knowing that we don't have to carry it alone? Thank you for listening to this audiobook excerpt from The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. If you enjoyed this emotional journey through the burdens of war and the human spirit, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating audiobooks and reflections.